Oh guys, it's time for Palantir's earnings, and with basically the market in chaos, and with Palantir just now hitting that profitability point, but with a massive run also happening in the stock, these earnings are critical to where we see our stock go over the next quarter. We must get to the bottom of what's going to happen on these earnings, but more importantly, what's going to happen to the stock price after the epic run it just went on. But I do have one massive negative that may come with these earnings that if it happens, it's going to leave you confused, scared, and just honestly not having any of this make a lot of sense. So I'll absolutely give that to you now. So we're going to cover that too right after you gently tap that like button and consider subscribing too. It's super easy to do if you like the truth without the hype. All right, so this earnings season once again has just been nothing short of extraordinary. I mean, you got mega caps moving like small caps. You have huge moves up after earnings, and then you have some others that are just getting beaten into oblivion after earnings, even though the earnings weren't all that bad, and kind of all over the map. It's kind of the usual earnings chaos that we get every single time this comes around, but it kind of seems to be amped up to 11 this time around for whatever reason. So remember, a stock is never more manipulated, never more ridiculous things happen around anything other than earnings itself. That's why I don't play earnings personally. It's just, man, I've seen incredible earnings send a stock down during a raging bull market, and vice versa. I've seen during a bear market terrible earnings and a stock absolutely rocket up 25%. I mean, there's just no real way to predict these things with any sort of accuracy. I mean, you got the algos going crazy. You got all the option games that are played around the earnings call itself. Then the human factor jumps in there and messes up all the algos, and the algos redo their thing again. And that's the reason for all the craziness that you kind of see the price action right after an earnings release happens. And then when the call happens, it's just really chaos, to be honest. And I would much rather and much prefer have my plan set in place and be ready to go well ahead of all that chaos, so that way I know exactly how to react, so that way I don't get caught up in any sort of emotional, crazy short-term game that Wall Street's playing that I want to completely avoid. We've been discussing earnings daily in my group, which you can actually join for less than $1 if you want to get in on those discussions and those videos. If you want to see when I add Palantir next and exactly my price target for Palantir and a bunch of other stuff like that, plus you got 5 free courses, tons of exclusive videos. You can jump in on our live Q&As or into my DMs anytime you want, and a ton more. So just, we actually have a stock analyzer tool that's coming. That's going to be completely free for members. I just released a video on what that's going to look like there. So if you want access to all that, make sure you check out the pinned comment down there and see if a membership's right for you, because I may have left something special down there for you guys. Kind of back on track here. Palantir to me is just kind of one of those stocks. It's just kind of different than really any other stock in the stock market. I mean, it just kind of reminds me of Tesla, kind of 3-4 years ago or so, where basically it's either a future $1 trillion company and it's going to be the leader in AI and it's going to be an incredible, market mover moving forward, one of the big dogs, or it's just complete overhyped trash and it's just, Alex Karp's an idiot and it's just never going to be anything more than just somebody that just serves the government. It kind of tends to fall into one of those two camps, and I haven't seen that since Tesla 3 or 4 years ago. So that's kind of the scenario we're kind of in with Palantir itself and kind of the battle that kind of goes on. And you got to kind of remember that as we go into these earnings, that is the battle that's out there. There are legitimately people that see it as a complete trash company. And then, of course, you got the bulls over here who see it as a future $1 trillion company. And some of the bulls are a little too bullish, in my opinion. And obviously, some of the bears are way too bearish on it. And you got to kind of draw that Tesla parallel there in regards to that battle, and then understanding kind of what the narrative is around earnings. So I personally think this earnings call, once again, is going to give both sides kind of talking points to, point to as to whether their bear thesis is right or whether the bull thesis is right. Of course, per the usual, we just can't get something that just is overwhelmingly the other way in regards to proving out one thesis or the other, kind of like we have with Tesla now, to where I don't need to, the bear arguments made a lot more sense 4 years ago than they do right now. Palantir isn't there yet, and it's not going to be there for a few years. So you got to kind of keep that in mind as we're kind of looking at this. So for me, I think they beat just a little bit on revenue and EPS. I think they're small beats. Maybe they just match EPS. I'm not sure. But nonetheless, I think there's small beats there on both of those, but I don't see anything spectacular coming in this earnings. Now, I'd love to be surprised, but just kind of seeing the deal flow that they've announced kind of coming in and kind of when a lot of those contracts are actually going to hit the bottom line, I'm not sure we're going to see all those big contracts hit the bottom line in this quarter. It might not even be next quarter either. I hope that it is, but maybe Q4 may be more realistic. But for me, that doesn't mean that it's a bad quarter or anything else like that. Again, I think it's going to be a good quarter, just nothing blowout outstanding or surprise profitability like we got 2 quarters ago or anything else like that. I think it's another steady, solid quarter from Palantir, which is exactly what I want to see as a long-term buy and hold investor. But the current environment is absolutely tough. And with the downgrade of the US, you kind of see the reason Wall Street is taking to just kind of beat down everything into oblivion. And I know not everybody likes that, but this market was on a rip roaring run. And when you see stocks going straight up, that's not natural. You need to pull back. And this gives them a reason to pull back on stocks. And they've been looking for a reason, right? I mean, we had earnings recession that never actually happened, and all sorts of other fears that were out there all the time that just didn't happen. So the market continued to rally, continued to rally, continued to rally. And now they finally have that reason to take a breather. And that's healthy, guys. That's something that we want to see as shareholders in the market. But in regards to Palantir, I do have to warn you about this one thing. So let's talk about the one huge negative right now, because to me, it's critical to this earnings call and critical to us understanding and keeping our emotions in check if it happens. Palantir has had an epic run. I mean, the right trade from a trading standpoint was to get out at 10, and it just ran all the way up to 20. That is just an epic, epic move in any stock, much less a stock like Palantir. Now we kind of have Wall Street looking to cool everything down, and unfortunately, Palantir is going to have one, two, maybe three or four things in their earnings that's going to give them a reason to sell off this stock. I mean, even if the numbers are great, incredible, blow it out of the water type numbers, I still think Wall Street is easily going to be able to go through the earnings and be able to pick out a few things to absolutely just crush the stock back down. And I'm talking about things like, hey, stock-based compensation, hey, you guys have too much, or government versus commercial. Hey, you guys grew commercial, but now it looks like government's slowing, so we got a problem there. Or vice versa. If the government does really, really well, then they're going to complain about how the commercial isn't growing as fast as they think it should. So it's kind of a catch-22 there. No matter what they do, somebody's going to point out as it's a negative. If government outgrows commercial, that's a problem. And then if commercial outgrows government, that's a problem, depending upon how you want to view it. So there's just some things like that that are going to be in these earnings that are going to give them a strong reason to sell off the stock. That doesn't mean it will sell off. I mean, it could very well run up to 25. I mean, that to me, you're still obviously at that stage, I think you're getting a little bit overvalued, but you're still not running crazy overvalued like you were a couple of years ago either. But if it does decide to crush the stock down, I don't think we're going to see $6 again either. I mean, if we do, I will happily add more. But I added so much all last year. I mean, you basically had almost a full year to add in the $6 and $7 range. And actually, after they turned profitable, they had a nice little run up, and then they crushed the stock right back down again to where you could pick up more shares in the $7 range again, which of course we did once again. So, I don't think we get beaten back down to those levels. However, you need to be prepared if it does get crushed down by any significant amount. So we're kind of in the inverse situation to where prior to that, it was just disproportionately beaten down. It had nowhere to go but up. Now we're kind of in the opposite scenario where we've had a pretty ridiculous run. I would definitely say it's definitely overbought. I don't think it's overvalued, but just overbought. And it's been a crazy run, and it needed a breather on the way to the $20 mark. We just never got that breather. So it makes sense to me that it might very well get crushed down. And how low? Who knows? Nobody knows. But the point being, you need to be prepared for it. So let's talk about what I'm doing to prepare for it right now. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to ignore all the noise, guys. I'm not going to listen to any takes. I'm not going to listen to any hot takes. I'm not going to listen to any reaction videos or anything else like that. I'm going to dive the earnings call myself. I'm going to listen to the call, look over all the numbers, and then make a decision from there as in regards to what I think. Is it a good quarter? Is it a bad quarter? Is it a lot of things like that? But the point being, you got to ignore the noise in the first place, because that noise was telling you sell out. Bulls on YouTube last year were selling out of this stock when it was at $5, or I guess I didn't buy any shares in the 5. We had a few group members that did, but when it was in the $6 and $7 range, that right there was the time to continue to pour money into the stock, but yet you had some of the bulls actually running from the stock at the time. So I'm going to ignore all the noise because I don't need any of that bias in my plan whatsoever in my mind as I'm creating my plan or as I'm adjusting my plan based upon these earnings or anything else like that. I don't need any of that, so just ignore that noise regardless of whether somebody's out there telling you it's going to 40 or somebody's out there telling you it's going to 5. Ignore both of them, create your own plan. And then the next thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to make sure I'm going to do, is I'm not going to time the market. It doesn't matter that I think personally that there's a good chance it could very well trade down because of all the other drama going on in the stock market and because it's had an incredible run and everything else. Every single person, and we've seen it play out over the past year, that tried to time themselves in and out of the market and all that sort of stuff, eventually gets themselves burned. And it's just not a game that I play. Sure, when a stock goes on a nice run like this, like Palantir has, I just stop my DCA. I just kind of, okay, great. I've been adding to it forever. I don't really need any more shares. I'm just looking at bonus shares. So I was able to, basically stop and let that sucker run. Am I going to try to sell it right now because I think it's going to go down lower and then I'll dive back in and play this in and out game? No. Sure, you may take profits, you may make a lot of money, but as we've seen, you also miss out on a lot of money. And for me, nobody's ever lost money taking a profit However, I know for a fact a lot of folks have missed out on absolute fortunes by taking profits. So, it kind of depends upon your angle. That's my angle as a long-term buy and hold investor. I've seen it in my own life, and I've seen it even on YouTube. I see some YouTubers. Everybody in my group, somebody will send me a clip occasionally of a YouTuber who says, "Man, if I would have just held on to that stock, instead of making, $50,000, it would have made me $1 million," or whatever the case is. That happens not all the time in a stock market, but it does happen periodically in a stock market where you're in on a great stock really, really early. You take some what you feel is massive profits, and then over the course of the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, it just continues to exceed, and it's a great company. It executes better than you thought. And then, of course, you're sitting back going, "Man, I wish I would have held on to those shares. They'd be worth X now." I see that a lot. I've seen it in people's personal lives. I've seen it here on YouTube. I've obviously done it myself. So it's not something I'm going to do. I'm not going to try to time the market. During this run up, I've been just stacking back my cash, waiting for some kind of a pullback of some sort. And this right here might very well be the opportunity to jump on that. Maybe. Who knows? Could very well run. If it runs, great. I'm in a great position. I already own all the shares that I want to own, and it goes up, and then I'm just making more money, and I can take that cash and I can look to place it elsewhere. So Peter Lynch, Warren Buffett, any of the other greats can't time the market. I have no idea why people still think they can time the market. No idea why, basically a dead person can outperform a trader statistically in regards to market performance. It's out there, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. I know people that make a living doing that sort of thing, so there's nothing wrong with it at all. But as a buy and hold investor, and you're here in my channel with those sorts of principles and that sort of investing outlook, this is something to where this is exactly how I would handle this earnings call. And remember, if you want to see all my buys of Palantir and other stocks in real time, if you want to see my watch list complete with price targets, we got a stock analyzer tool that's going to be free for members, and you get to take 5 courses, be a part of the best Discord out there. And just there's so much in there, guys. Just check out the pinned comment down there and see if a membership's right for you. And click this video here if you want to see exactly what I'm buying in this market. And click here to see my exact plan for this market. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.